Oh hey, didn't see you there. I've been spending a bit of time in the dungeons lately. Yeah, the whole rebellion thing didn't go down very well. But at least they snuck in my lighter with me. You don't want to know how. Before we get into this week's adventures, there's a scholar in the cell next door who says I got a few things wrong when we last met. The thing is, the Veiled God isn't a he, but a genderless being. And just for a quick recap, our heroes are Gwyn Valentine IV, Philip Clydesdale, Drainog Briarheart, Jarell Niprit, Cassian Vicendraz III, and Valkyria Doria. They all met in a tavern thanks to a Mr. Gaslow Thorn, who eventually almost gets kidnapped by two masked men. They kill these masked men, but are forced to flee from the Royal Guards, where they end up at Gaslow's house. The episode ends with someone being at the front door. With those out of the way, let's talk about episode 3. Now the episode opens with the party realising that an Inquisitor is outside the door called Grinnick. Gaslow makes them all hide in a secret passageway hidden behind a stone wall, and then goes to speak with him himself. So here we're told that the Inquisitors are sent by the Scholar Arcanum to hunt down magic users. But that got me thinking, what are the different roles in the Scholar Arcanum? So at the lower levels of the Scholar Arcanum, there are soldiers that are supplied to them by the royal family's own army. These men are trained in fighting spellcasters and keep them captive where necessary. But when it comes to tracking down spellcasters, they send in an interrogator. Now these are men who are not only trained in fighting spellcasters, but also hunting them down. Now above them are the Inquisitors. They control about a dozen or so interrogators and only really deal with matters that are threats to the royal family or other high orders. Reigning above them all is the Council of Magi. They mainly dictate the school side of the Arcanum, but are so influential that I hear they can influence the king's decisions on matters to do with magic. They're made up of very powerful but highly trusted spellcasters. Whew, well, back to the campaign. I truly hope to meet Gaslow at a poker table someday because I have never seen a worse liar as he tries to tell his fabricated story about what happened to the inn to the Inquisitor.
Things again, I think he was trying to steal. Criminal activity is not what us City Watch people do.
Thankfully for Gaslow, Drainog has an idea to use mana illusion in just the strangest way.
Do a small sort of symbol with his hand, and then there'll be a gurgling, bowel-wrenching sound, like someone really needs the toilet to emanate from where Gaslow is.
With that wonder of magic, Gaslow leaves to go to the bathroom, letting the Inquisitor wander around the room a little bit until he returns with enough confidence to assert his innocence. I feel like I'm getting darker. With that, Grinnick leaves to speak with Gaslow's father, a Lord Balon Thorn. Good news for our party, who breathes a long sigh of relief. Bad news for Gaslow when his father returns to slap 2 tons of shit out of him.
And then just as Gaslow starts to speak, there is a...
Oh! That doesn't surprise me.
Daddy fall.
I could hear that slap from here. Anyway, it turns out that in the secret room there are little tunnels that go all over the manor, and they're beckoned through these tunnels by a halfling servant called Lisbeth. She explains that Gaslow has invited them all to spend the night in his room. Along the way, Cassian gets little, let's say, prejudice towards the wee folk, and that's where Drainog brings up how the gnomes suffered in the Great War.
I hear that the non-humans helped begin the war against the elves. My kind mostly didn't. We stayed to the woods that were then destroyed in the conflict.
So, how exactly were the wee folk involved in the Great War? Originally, the Great War was just between elves, the Dark Lord loyalists, and the rebels, but the rebels were so outmanned and outgunned that they had to ask other races for help, and here we'll discuss the contribution that the gnomes and the dwarves gave. Because the gnomes are such great tinkerers, they provided the rebels with much better armour and weapons. Their main goal in the conflict was to protect the wilderness and its wildlife from the Dark Lord's forces. Now it's believed that dwarves were once gnomes who were cast out from their home by the Dark Lord long ago, so when the Great War came around, they joined it to get their ancestral homes back. They provided better materials for blacksmiths, and even helped out by striking the Dark Lord's army with guerrilla tactics by using the rocky passages of the mountains. So back in the campaign, the group decided to spend the night in Gaslow's room, and come morning they settled that they're going to witness the public execution of the man who tried to kill the Child King, that being Lord Gasset. Now to me that's odd, because I knew Orgassi and he was due for an elevation in status very soon. I just guess he couldn't wait. Saying their last goodbye to Gazlo, who gives them his dearest thanks, the group split off into 2 teams to witness the execution. When pressed to speak, Gasset breaks down into tears and apologises to everyone for not being able to save them, leaving us off with some harrowing final words.
You're all going to die.
And that's where the episode ends. You know, with Gasset gone, I guess I'm next on the chopping block. That whole rebellion thing was just a joke, you know. You know that, right? I mean, you'll tell the guards it was such a joke, right? Just a goof, right? You'll tell them that, right?